Seahawks coaches are not going to the NFL Combine, and it's not something to worry about, but I want to break down the interesting change that's going on in Seattle and why it's okay the coaches are not going to the Combine, and some of my theories on why it might not be happening as well. We all know the NFL Scouting Combine begins this week. Of course, John Schneider, the general manager of the Seahawks, and now who has an even bigger role than he's ever had with the team, will be there. But new head coach Mike Macdonald is not going to be there, and the coaching staff, the entire staff, will not attend the Combine. And here's what John Schneider told Wyman and Bob on Seattle Sports 710. Why? He said they're just focused on implementing their systems. So they're not going to be going down to the Combine next week. They're all going to be here just 24/7 installing everything they need to get installed, because it's basically a race to April 8th when the players come in. Mike had coached in the AFC Championship game, so there's a little bit of a feeling that we're behind the 8-ball a little bit. So we're getting caught up, but still staying true to his hiring process and the group that's come in and just mixing in all those people together. Well, at first, it seems like a big deal, right? This is a freak out situation. Why in the world would our coaching staff not go to the Combine? I think it's very interesting because I don't think it's the coaching staff that matters only, right? When I say John Schneider is going to be there, that means that there's going to be a lot of representatives for the Seahawks, from the front office, general manager, assistant general managers, personnel, scouting teams, people that are not just on the coaching staff. They're taking notes, they're getting things done, and it's going to be very taken care of with somebody like John Schneider. Now, what's interesting as well that you have to consider is over the last 14 years with Pete Carroll and John Schneider, Pete Carroll had a big role in player personnel, free agency, trades, decisions. One big thing they talked about in this press conference when Pete Carroll was fired, let go, moved on, whatever you want to call it, one of the biggest conversation starters or pieces of content that came out of that was that Pete Carroll even was saying, I'm excited for John to have this opportunity moving forward, to have this new opportunity of seeing what it's like to be a full-on GM, making all the decisions, doing it himself. And that's what's interesting here is John Schneider is now in full control of personnel. That wasn't the case back then. Pete Carroll was the coach and the vice president of football operations. And then you had John Schneider as the GM. So they were working hand in hand in terms of player personnel, trades, decisions, draft. Now, the way it's different is, one, the reason not to worry is Combine isn't the only place that you can interview draft prospects. So if there's somebody John Schneider is very interested in and he wants Mike Macdonald to know him or the staff to know him, they can schedule an interview. That's number one. And number two is, either way, John Schneider now has full control of player personnel. I'm not saying that means he will not speak to Mike Macdonald. I'm not saying that means that he won't consult the team, his other scouts, his other personnel inside the front office. But it's not a Pete Carroll decision anymore. It's not a head coach decision. It's a John Schneider decision. Before, it was a John Schneider and Pete Carroll work together, but Pete Carroll probably has a little more say on the really important pieces. Now, John Schneider makes these decisions. It's done. Like, he can make the decision. He's the one that needs to be at these combines, more importantly. And I'm sure in other years, Mike Macdonald will be there. But this year, he's thinking, I got a young coach. They have to get this all together. We're behind the 8-ball. Let's get the coaching staff together, doing all their little things. Get it all together. Get the whole staff ready for whatever they need to do. And I will go take care of this draft, because that's what he feels like he's probably more of an expert at. Especially right now, as a first-year head coach with Mike Macdonald, he probably doesn't think that this year's as important for them to be there. And another theory I have, and now I don't want to make this out to be a conspiracy theory, but it kind of is for me, is the two most represented teams in all of college football are two very interesting teams. This week's NFL Combine has 18 players from Michigan. The most, I think it's a record now, right? It's they set a record for the most players ever sent to the Combine. 18 from Michigan. And you know who's number 2 is the Washington Huskies at 13. You know who this team has a lot of connections to? Mike McDonald. Guess where he was? He was at Michigan before. Jay Harbaugh. Who's his dad? Jim Harbaugh. He was the head coach of Michigan. He knows a lot about these guys. Interesting. Ryan Grubb was down the street in Seattle, Washington. The second most players in the combine at 13. The top two teams, Michigan with 18 players, Washington with 13. Not only is Washington down the street from the Seahawks, and not, I know that one's in Montlake, one's in Renton, like the Prask facilities, but you know what I mean. They're both in Seattle. They're both in the greater Seattle area. They know the players well. You have the offensive coordinator that came from Washington, and then you got Jay Harbaugh, who's coming from Michigan, and his dad was the coach. And you have Mike McDonald that has all those connections. A lot of they have a pretty good grasp on the top two teams that sent players. 18 and 13 is very high. A lot of teams send 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They can work on those people. John Schneider's got that taken care of. And I just feel like this team is young. There's a lot of college connections. They know what they're looking at. They know what they need to do. They need to focus on the coaching while John Schneider can go take care of the rest of it. It's a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but I do think the two most represented teams are Michigan and Washington. And they know a lot about both those teams. Let that be a conspiracy theory. Call me stupid. I don't care. I think it's interesting. Overall, don't worry about this. That's my overall consensus. Is it's not something to worry about. They're going to be well represented. And you still get a chance to talk to these guys. There's always going to be an opportunity. I also will say, we're not talking about a top 5 pick here. We're talking about the 16th pick. And I'm not shitting on the importance of a top 5 pick. But I do think right now, John Schneider has his power for the first time in 14 years. He says, this is the 1 year that I can kind of do this. I don't have nobody has final say over me. He's going to go do it. Let the coaches do the coaching. Let them get the staff prepared. Let the young staff. I mean, Ryan Grubb's not coached in the NFL. Jay Harbaugh, the special team coach, is coming from college as well. Mike McDonald's only been in the NFL for a few years. He's in his 30s. He's the youngest head coach in football. Has never put together a staff in all these different things. Aiden Dirty. I don't know. It's Dirty. He said it's Dirty, but they say call him AD. So I'm just going to start calling him AD. If I'm talking about AD, it's the defensive coordinator. He's not even the guy calling all the plays, but he's a first-time coordinator, all these different things. You have a lot to prepare. Like, this team has a lot to get together, a lot to figure out, a lot to make sure things are okay. And it'll be interesting to see how this draft goes. There's part of me that says you have to completely trust John Schneider, which you do, because that's our only option. But I'm interested to see, without Pete Carroll making final personnel decisions, were a lot of these huge drafts a Pete Carroll doing? The last 2 years, 2023 and 2022, were amazing drafts. And then obviously in the 2011, 12, 13 range, when we won the Super Bowl, those drafts were amazing. Were those Pete Carroll? Were those John Schneider's? Was it a 50-50 shot? I'm very interested to see this year. It's clearly without Mike McDonald, first year for McDonald. Let's see how good John Schneider is at this. And I'm very excited because if it goes really well, that means our future is going to be really bright with John Schneider keeping full personnel decisions, having a great young head coach. It's going to be really interesting. Overall, just don't worry about the fact that they're not at the combine. I think it's kind of just worth seeing, what's going to happen this year, the first time doing it. We'll find out, and make sure you like and subscribe. I love you all. Peace.